Kia ora. My name's Christine Fletcher. I'm a social worker in the medical social work team here at Counties Manukau, and I first became interested in this topic after I've done quite a few applications to the court under the Personal Protection and Property Rights Act. And it's about welfare guardians for our unbefriended adults in Aotearoa. A few years ago, a doctor wrote to me about one of the patients that I'd placed under a personal order for placement, who had no welfare guardian, saying we'd like to do some invasive investigations and the social worker will find a welfare guardian to present to the appointment at Auckland Hospital so we can make the decision about whether he should proceed for these invasive investigations. And I had to ring up and let him know that there was nobody, there was no welfare guardian. So there are quite a few of these people around. Of the 6 applications I've been involved in, only one has been for the appointment of a welfare guardian. The others have all been for personal orders for placement. The people who are, welfare guardians are appointed for people who wholly lack capacity to make a decision, particular decisions or all their decisions. And they're people that we see regularly in the hospital. These are some of the conditions that when I did my qualitative interviews with people working here and outside the hospital, these were some of the people that they identified. Unbefriended adults, this is a term that comes from overseas, in the literature overseas. About 6 years ago, Carp and Wood wrote about this group of people called unbefriended adults in regard to patients in the hospital who wholly lacked capacity. And it's, some of the key informants that I spoke to said it's not that they've got no family, it's sometimes that the family are unwilling to be involved, they're not suitable to be involved, there's conflict in the family, there's abuse, or as we're seeing in New Zealand now, often family are overseas. They might reside in Australia or in the islands. And if you're a welfare guardian, you need to have a welfare guardian in a jurisdiction that the court can have control over. So the court would be reluctant or is reluctant to appoint family who might live in Australia. They want the guardian to be here in New Zealand. What are the decisions needing to be made? The key informants that I interviewed who worked within the hospital, usually it was about residential placement for these people. The people who worked outside the hospital, legal professionals, they were often dealing with intellectually disabled people, or they said that they found often it was about medical things that they were needing a welfare guardian for. Who makes them now? Dr. Bartley, who's my supervisor, says we have what he would call a policy adhocracy, where we can go to the court and apply for a one-off order for a medical intervention or a placement. We have Right 7.4 under the Health and Disability Code, which we often use here in the hospital when we urgently need to get consent for a procedure. Day-to-day decisions about people in facilities are often made by caregivers and managers in the facility. But we know that residential facilities are private facilities, so there's a conflict of interest there. And I've had, with personal orders for placement, I've had people contacting me saying, is the person allowed to go out with this family, or are they allowed to do that? And I'm saying, well, I'm not the welfare guardian, I just made the application. And then family who want to keep them at home. So there's been a bit in the media about people who've been who wholly lack capacity or have been kept at home by the family, who are making the decisions and they've been tied to chairs or not looked after properly. So we have a pretty desperate situation sometimes. So why is this a problem? I think I just covered that really. These people, if we get a personal order for placement, some of them live quite a long time, and things do come up for people living in facilities that need very important decisions for them. Doctors are in a very difficult position, like the doctor that was asking me about, well, who's going to make the decision about this? Because medicine is more and more complicated these days. And there's all sorts of side effects or badness that could happen to you as a result of your invasive investigation. I got an email just a few weeks ago, why is this issue important to counties? I think I've sort of explained that. But it's about our values, it's about how we care for patients, it's about their best interests. Yeah, we're caring people, and as a society we need to care about what happens to them later on. The population demographics, this is happening all around the world. The Statistics New Zealand has a nice little interaction population pyramid that shows that our population is, instead of being a pyramid, is becoming more rectangular. So the proportion of older people is growing, and the demographic that gets dementia is growing. So for us here at the hospital, this is of concern. So my research was a small qualitative study for my master's about what key informants think would be the most suitable system for arranging these welfare guardians for our unbefriended people in New Zealand. And I've done 7 one-on-one semi-structured interviews. And I think I've talked before, 5 people work within counties and 2 worked outside the hospital. The possibilities that were identified from the literature, and also some of the key informants came up with these and knew about them from overseas, was a lot of jurisdictions have offices of the public guardian. In Australia, different states have an office of the public guardian. England, under the Mental Capacity Act 2005, has established an Office of the Public Guardian, where welfare guardians, or deputies as they're called, can be appointed for people who have nobody. Unpaid volunteer welfare guardians. In America, they had a scheme called the Wishart Volunteer Advocate Scheme, which ran out of a hospital, and they recruited student doctors, social workers, lawyers, business administrators to be volunteer welfare guardians for people, and they had them appointed, and they had to take it on for a year. And in New Zealand, we've actually, during the time of my research, we've set up a welfare guardian trust in Otago to do a similar kind of thing, where volunteers are recruited to be welfare guardians for people who have nobody. And then in some countries like Japan or the United States, you can privately pay welfare guardians. Key informants, when they talked about these systems, said that they thought if you had a volunteer workforce, you're still going to spend quite a lot of money training them, looking after them. And it's quite a complex task, helping people make decisions or making decisions for people. And one of the informants who had issues with just at the making an application stage pointed out that if it's a conflicted family or there's problems, we don't want to put volunteers into that. We need somebody that's got some backing. On the privately paid guardians, one key informant had experience of the system in America, and she thought that it was a good idea that it was a paid role and that it deserved to be paid. But there's been quite a lot in the media about fraud and stuff through paid guardians in the United States. And key informants on the Office of the Public Guardian, quite a few of the key informants were very interested in this idea. And they thought that it could do other things as well, like it could be widened to give advice to family guardians, and that it could have a very big role helping sort out a lot of the issues that we have. Some people were really concerned that it would be poorly staffed and there wouldn't be enough money to fund it. And some people really wanted it to have a function like Oranga Tamariki, where concerns could be reported and it would be more official. Supported decision making is a theme that came up a lot, that more people with intellectual disability are receiving services in these categories of intellectual disability, and that it's a big human rights issue that sometimes we are not assisting people or giving them a chance to be supported to make a decision with speech language therapists and things like that. And this was one of the professionals from the community who felt like supported decision making also needed to be considered alongside these measures, because under the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, New Zealand has an obligation to pick up its game in regard to this. One key informant wanted enduring powers of attorney made compulsory when people reached national super age, and therefore said that an Office of the Public Guardian would need to be created to help people who didn't have anybody that they could appoint. We need more detailed research on these different systems, especially now that we've already got a volunteer welfare guardian system starting up in the South Island. We need to quantify the number of people, and I just wanted to say thank you to the key informants who gave up their time at the end of the day to talk to me for an hour about this, and also to my social work colleagues who've supported me through this journey. Thank you very much.